Hello, Zalalam from 2620 is active. Today we will discuss about Java control statements. But before that, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe. And if you like the videos, like, comment and share. Java control statements are very important concepts that we have to understand to use the Java language very effectively and efficiently, and they are very important in controlling or monitoring the flow of execution based on the state of the program. When we say the state of the program, we use variables, and the state of those variables will be used to control statements in monitoring or designing the flow of execution of the program or the code. So we have got three types of control statements. The first one is selection, and selection statement is used to choose path of execution based on an outcome of a Boolean expression, or based on the outcome of a scenario which we call cases in switch. And the other type is iteration or loops. That means this is a statement which enables to execute repeatedly particularly similar statements, or with similar or related statements until we reach to the end of what we require in the loop. And this is usually effected through for loops, while loops, and do while loops. We will see in our lab session. The other is jump statements, and jump statements enable us to either stop a loop or execute switch statements meaningfully, or pass a certain state of the program in loops. So these are the control statements, and they are used in many forms. We will discuss each of them. So the first one is if statements. So as the word indicates, the Java statements is started by the word if. As you see here, it is started by the word if. Then it will be followed by curved parenthesis, closed curved parenthesis, and this with a condition. A condition is a statement with a Boolean outcome, or an expression with a Boolean outcome. So it could be a Boolean variable, it could be a relational statement. We have discussed the relational statement in our previous lecture, or it could be a logical statement. So for example, 5 greater than 7 is a condition with a Boolean outcome. Okay, so this must be used with if followed by curved parenthesis, inside which we have an expression or condition with a Boolean outcome. Then this will be followed by curved braces, left side and the right side curved braces. Then in between this we will do our execution of statements. Okay, these statements will be executed. These will be executed if this condition is true. If it is false, the execution will go out of this statement and continue to the statements below this condition. So this is a simple if statement. Okay, so if statements also have else components, so we call them if-else statements. We have got the if statement as we have discussed before. Then this will be followed by the else section. So we will say else with left curly brace and then right curly brace. In between it you have statements to execute. Okay, if this condition in the if parenthesis is false, then in all other conditions these statements will be executed. Okay, if this condition is false, we will go to the else part, and in all other conditions other than true outcome for this condition, we will execute this statement. Okay, the statements in the else section. Okay, so this is if else statement, and this also can be with if else if, so we call them if else if statements. And this is when we have multiple of conditions, we use them with else if statements. So we have got the beginning if statement. Okay, we cannot start with else if. Okay, we always start if statements with if condition and statements, then we can follow them with else as we have discussed previously, or it can be followed with else if. Okay, so here is a condition. In scenarios where there is another condition, we do these statements. Okay, if this is false, we will go to this one. If this is false, we will go to another if else. So it can continue on and finally ends with an else statement. Okay, and if statements can be nested. Okay, nested means we can have if statements inside if statements. So if we have an if statement here with a condition, okay, if this is true, we will go to in between these braces and execute these statements. So we will have another if statement in here with another condition and statements. Okay, so if this is true and if this is true, we will do this thing one. If this is true and if this is false, we will do statements if there are any outside of the inside if statements. If there are no, we'll go out of this all if statements. Okay, and the other control statement in Java is switch statement. As the word indicates, it starts with the word switch. Okay, and it will be followed by a curved brace inside which we have cases or scenarios. So these scenarios are usually whole numbers or integer variables or character variables. Commonly we use them with those variables, and based on these choices we will monitor our switch statement. And inside this, after this curved parenthesis, we will follow the statement with open curly braces, and then we close the curly braces. In between there are case statements. Okay, so we will say case 1, and this colon is very important. Okay, this is part of the syntax, it has to be followed by this colon. Then we will do our statements and we will end the case statement with a break. Okay, this is very important. Break should follow in each case scenario. Otherwise, if you don't have a break in here, and if you have other case scenarios, case 2, case 3, then this will be executed. If they don't have break statement, all will be executed, and you will have bizarre outcomes in your execution. So always don't forget to use the colon, and then at the end of a case, the break statement. Finally, we will end the switch statement with a default statement. Okay, we will say default colon and then statements to execute. Okay, at the if statements, this can be nested too. Okay, so as we have discussed previously, we have switch, the case inside parentheses, and the opening curly brace, the closing curly brace. Then we have case 1. Okay, then in this case 1 that we have mentioned as statements, this can be switch statements too, so it can be nested inside switch. Okay, so you have to note that when we say nested statements, nesting them within similar type of statements, but we can nest the switch statement in if conditions as well. Okay, so the other type of statement in Java is iteration statements, and we have got, as we have said, while, do while, and for loops. So the while statement is written as we start by the word while, and in curved parentheses we put our condition. So this condition is a Boolean value or an expression with Boolean outcome is used as a condition, like we have discussed in the if statement. This condition should be a Boolean value or an expression with a Boolean outcome. So if this condition is true, we will go inside here the curly braces and execute these statements. Okay, that's how we do the while statement, and it can be nested as well. Okay, so we have while condition and another while statement within a while statement, so it can be nested. So we do the do while statement with do and then followed by a curly brace, left curly brace. We do statements and then we will end by a while condition. So at the end we have to insert our condition, which is a Boolean value or an expression with a Boolean outcome. So do while loops could be nested. It's not a common practice, but it can be nested. And the other iteration statement is for loop, and for loop is one of the commonest iteration statements used in Java, and it's written as starting with the word for, okay, then followed by two parentheses inside which we have got initialization. The initialization is a variable which controls the iteration in the for statement, and the condition is an expression to identify an end of a for loop. Okay, if that condition is still true, we will continue with the for loop. If the condition is false, we will exit out of the for loop. And the iteration is using the variable either with increment or decrement, and we commonly use integer variables to control for loops, but there are other variants we will discuss soon that we can use to iterate as a for loop. So inside these curly braces we will execute the statements as long as the condition in the for loop is true. Okay, if it's false, we will exit from the for loop. And we can have nested for loops as well. So this is a for loop that we have discussed, so we can have another for loop within a for loop, and this kind of nested for loops are common in navigating through multi-dimensional arrays or some data structures like sorting and the like. So we will practice them in our lab session, and we can have one or more than one nesting of loops. Okay, we can have another for loop inside the second for loop too. So one of the four variants is the infinite for loop. So this is what you do to make intentional infinite for loops in Java. So you include in the parentheses two semicolons and do the statements in between the curly braces. This makes infinite and you do it when you plan it intentionally. But when you do your loop statements, always you have to be careful not to end in infinite statements, as they will not stop unless you put a specific condition that will halt the loop. The other variant of for loops is the for each loop. It's sometimes called for each, but it's stated as for with parentheses. Type, this is a data type, and you give it a name and you'll have a collection. This is usually arrays, but it can be lists and so on. But the type of this collection and this one should be the same. For example, if you have array of integers, this type should be integer with identifier. So in between the curly braces we execute statements according to the way we want it to do on each item of the collection. So the other important statement in Java is jump statements, and the first is break statement. And break statement is commonly used to move out of loops. So we can use break if there is some condition in a loop and it will exit out of the loop, and we use it to exit from a scenario. So as we have discussed, in each case we have to end it with a break statement, and otherwise the execution will continue with other cases too. So sometimes it is used as go-to statement with labeled statements in Java programming. The other jump statement is continue, and this is commonly used in loops to escape executing statements if a certain condition is true. So that's it for this video. Thank you for your time.